Some people swear that this man died a sangoma, while other people say that or claim that he became a devout Christian at some point. So, what's the truth? Stick around, I'll tell you what I think in the end, right? Nzikana's story begins with his birth amongst his mother's people because the poor woman had been chased, or she had fled from her marital home. Yeah, and then her father, that's where he grew up, and then his father then sent for him when he was 13, and it was while he was living with his father that he heard his first Christian sermon. Now, I don't think that he paid much attention to Christianity at that point, because the boy still went on to go to, initiation school, which is a traditional rite of passage. The man then went and married 2 wives, which is a practice that is not really approved by Christian culture. And at some point, he did become a sangoma, right? But there was like one strange morning that changed everything around for him, which is why people said he became Christian. Right? Anyway, so while he was staring at his favorite ox in the morning, like this is something that he liked to do, and while he was doing it this time, a bright light is said to have struck this thing, and he fell into a trance, right? Then when he came out of it, he asked the boy who was next to him whether he had seen that light too, and the boy looked at him like, no, right? Very confused. Then later on, Nzikana attended a dance, right? And as he joined the dance, a wind rose up and disturbed everybody. And then so he just decided to sit down and just continue to think about. He was very much distracted by his thoughts about what had happened in the morning, right? And then a few moments later, he got up, started dancing again, and then the wind came back. So he just sat down and he was in his thoughts. The third time when he got up, a huge wind arose and he heard something say, stop. And I think it was at this point that he came to understand that something had come inside of him. And it required that he change a lot of things. People think that it's the Holy Spirit. And they think it's the Holy Spirit because Nzikana did things like he went and he parted with his, very politely, he parted with his youngest wife. He later came under the mentorship of missionaries James Reed and Joseph Williams. And he also started morning and evening prayer meetings in his village. Now, there's something quite odd that I found about this, right? One of his most committed followers, Old Soga, he saw this and he was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own prayer meeting as well for my family and stuff. So he did that. But Old Soga never stopped seeing sangomas, never stopped consulting them. In fact, his wife, who they call the Great Wife, who I think is Umamkulu, asked to leave the marriage so that their son, Utio, could grow up and be a Christian, which he did. He then became one of the first ordained ministers in South Africa, I think it was. But she understood that for this to happen, he needed to grow up with purely Christian influences, which Old Soga did not seem to be. This was the fruit of Nzikana. Now, there's another instance where Nzikana was working for the chief who was at that time at war, right? And it said that Nzikana's divinations took too long to foresee that the chief would lose the battle. See, all of this makes me believe that the man died still being a sangoma. Okay. I don't think it was the Holy Spirit that entered him. I think more so it was a spirit of religion, spirit that holds very highly, practices. Like when we go to church, that's what I think entered him. Spirit of works and some other spirit, not the Holy Spirit. But there is a little story that I heard about Nzikana. I didn't read about it anyway in my research, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it's worth mentioning, okay? It is said that Nzikana at some point wanted to get baptized very early on, maybe like during Van der Kemp's time. But the baptism was stopped because Unsikane refused to remove his traditional Xhosa clothing and exchange them for Western clothing. And I quite enjoyed hearing that story because I honestly think that a Christianity that requires you to abandon and divorce your God-given cultural expression is perverted and demonic. God does not condemn African expression, right? And there's this Bible verse that kind of helped me to understand this. It says, do not shave the sides of your head, do not trim your beard, do not cut gashes in yourself or put tattoos on yourself to mourn for the dead, right? And if you check throughout the Bible, you'll see that this practice is condemned because in this context of mourning for the dead. But the saints have run with it, like, oh, tattoos, tattoo, tattoo, tattoo. No, context. Let's read context, right? But the thing that has caught my attention is this part about gashes. Tattoos at this point, in the society that we live in, I think somebody could walk in the room with tattoos and we'd think, oh, that's a nice sleeve that they have going. That person is artistic. But let somebody with siggings, I don't want to say the word, let somebody with siggings come in, we would look and it's likely that we would think, man, that person has mutilated themselves or that person has done, demonic practices. But there's a verse in the Bible that can help you think otherwise of this. God said in Isaiah, I have inscribed your name in the palm of my hands. And when we look in the Hebrew, that word inscribe also translates to engrave. Now, this definitely relates back to what Christ did on the cross. But I think that it's very interesting that God should use the word inscribe, engrave. It means to cut. So that makes me think that is God's expression of his love for us, right? So that makes me think that if I were to go and put siggings in my body to express my Christianity artistically, it's an artistic expression, not to sacrifice pain, sacrifice flesh, or whatever the liquid that comes out of the flesh. No, that's already done on the cross. But just as an artistic expression, my God would be pleased with me. That's my take. Anyway, that's my take. You can tell me what you think in the comment section, even about Unsikana. Let's talk about it in the comment section if you have a different idea on that. If you have trouble looking for information on such things, doing research and finding credible information, sign up for my my mailing list, because I'm going to be sending all my sources that I used to make this video. There's some information that I just didn't get to in this video, so you're going to be able to do a deep dive for yourself through that. And also, I didn't talk about Nzikana's prophecy, the one where he talks about white people coming. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about my take on that in the mailing list as well. So if you want the sources and you want my take, you want to hear about that prophecy, sign up for my mailing list and I'll see you there. Okay, bye.